Hi, everyone. My name is Vivek Bapat. I lead our brand purpose and sustainability solutions marketing area at SAP. And today, what I'm going to talk about is how companies can convert their ambition into action when it comes to sustainability and overcome what we would refer to as a sustainability performance gap. One of the things that we have observed is that the discussion, especially in the corporate world as related to sustainability, is a lot of different types of data and facts and numbers and so on and so forth. But the real story of sustainability is really a human story of sustainability. And that if we don't address some of the challenges that we see related to sustainability on topics like climate action, on topics like the creation of waste as companies operate these complex network supply chains, or we don't address some of the issues related to social inequalities across supply chains and value chains, the impact is on real human beings, and the impact is existential, especially impacting those in our society who are already disadvantaged. So, for instance, whenever we talk about the negative impact of climate change, the real essence, the real problem is that it's going to result in food and water shortages for millions of people around the world. When we talk about the challenges of dumping vast amount of plastics in the ocean, for instance, the impact is on ecological issues and health problems for communities that depend upon these oceans and rivers and lands for their basic sustenance. When we talk about responsibility across supply chains, we're talking about real people impacted, for instance, on the wage as well as education's gaps moving forward. So the net effect here is that sustainability is much more than numbers and facts and figures, but they're actually impacting everyday human lives. One of the things that has happened in the last many years now, and actually has taken on much more prominence, especially over the last few years, is that a majority of customers and citizens now trust businesses to solve some of these existential global problems. And this is a change from what used to be in the past, where NGOs and, for instance, governments were basically more trusted than business institutions to solve these problems. This is a statistic that we've seen in a study from the Edelman Trust Barometer, which measures these types of things. And over time, what we are seeing is that um, as compared to media, NGOs, or any other institutions, majority of the customers and citizens actually prefer that governments solve these problems, both on the aspects of ethics as well as competence. Now, with that trust comes responsibility. So, as you can see from some of the statistics that I've shown on the screen here, 58% of those studied will buy and advocate for brands that expressly demonstrate sustainability as part of their practices. 60% of the new workers that are entering the workforce want to actually work for companies that are authentic in their business practices. And there's a lot of investment that's going on, both from a personal investment perspective, but also from an institutional perspective, where funds and monies are actually moving to businesses that can authentically display some of the claims that they're making on sustainability. And as a consequence of this, what we are seeing is that 88% of institutional investors are now subjecting these companies and basically investigating ESG performance in the same way that they measure financial performance. So, as we look at this idea of businesses being more responsible or being subjected to this type of scrutiny, we also know that from SAP's perspective, we're able to actually look at the world of business in maybe a different way than many other organizations do. So one of the things that's great about SAP is that we are considered to be a central nervous system in the world of business. And our purpose is to help the world run better and improve people's lives through the enablement of our business customers. We are running today in across 180 countries. We're serving 25 different industries, 440,000 customers, large, mid-size, as well as small businesses, an incredible ecosystem of partners, and more than 107,000 employees across 150 different nationalities. So I think when you look at the scale of SAP, we also know that an SAP system today is touching almost 87% of the global commerce on a daily basis. So we have a unique vantage point in terms of how we look at the problems of sustainability or related to the challenges as well as the opportunities of sustainability. And what we are finding is that um, that most customers are looking at sustainability really as a journey and not as a destination. And so what we believe is happening in the market is that there is a new opportunity to look at the economics of value. And that new belief is basically that the new economics is essentially an opportunity for us to bring both profit and planet together in service of people. So when you break it down in that way, what you'll see is that there's obviously economic value proposition that every business has to continue. That's really the lifeblood of every business. But they can also do so in a sustainable way, which is what we are showing on the axis, on the x-axis here in this particular chart. And when you look at everything that's going on across all kinds of different industries and businesses, what you see is that essentially businesses are focused on three big areas. One is how can they achieve regulatory compliance. So this is both existing compliance as well as new compliance opportunities or regulations that are about to actually sort of hit them at both the local as well as global level. Companies are looking to decarbonize, reduce waste, and to drive social responsibility, not just within the four walls of their business, but across their extended supply chains. And many companies are looking at sustainability as an opportunity to create new business models, new solutions, and products. And again, like I said, I think this is sort of our belief is that this is the new economics of value creation, and it's about really bringing profit as well as planet together in the service of people. So what we have started doing is we've teamed up with a company called AlphaSense. And over the last couple of years, we've been measuring the mentions of sustainability within quarterly earnings reports from the C-suite. And what we've seen is a significant increase in the expression of sustainability as part of the earnings reports for many publicly traded companies. And as you can see from the chart, there's an enormous increase. It's a 44% increase over the last 4 years, or last 2 years, I should say, in terms of how many times a CEO of a company or a CFO of a company is discussing and mentioning sustainability in the same way in the same breath as they would on their financial statements. And a lot of these discussions have to do with ambitions that these companies have stated in terms of their short-term as well as long-term goals related to things like net zero, reduction of waste, or related to driving social justice across these supply chains. So there's a lot of talk around ambitions in terms of what you're hearing from many of these business leaders. So what we are finding is that in reality, talking the talk is much easier than walking the walk, which means that in many of these cases, what we're finding is that there's a sustainability performance gap. And basically, what that gap means is that there's a difference between the ambitions of many of these businesses and the actual actions that are resulting in positive and better ESG performance. And we understand that this is an early start, so this is not necessarily an indictment on any company, but it gives us a good sense of what the difference is and what are some of the challenges and opportunities that we need to overcome. What we've done is we've tracked that across multiple industries, and you can argue that in some cases, industries have made broad claims and they've made significant claims, but they've not quite caught up with the activation of those claims. In other cases, what you might find is that companies are hesitant in terms of making these types of ambitions in a public way. So the sustainability gap just gives us a sense of where the opportunity and the challenges are across multiple industries. Now, when we dive a little bit deeper into some of these gaps, what we are finding is that the central challenge in terms of closing these gaps has to do with two things. One of them is the ability for companies to actually assess the data that they have at their disposal, I should say, both the financial as well as the non-financial insights from the data across the value chain, across their supply chains with their trading partners, and within the four walls of their business. The accessibility of that data at the granularity and the fidelity that is required is just not there. And 80% of the customers that we've talked to feel like this is a significant problem that they need to overcome. And in fact, a majority of the companies are in fact still using sort of outdated technology, including just really spreadsheets to be able to sort through and sift through the data that is required. The other part of the challenge is that many companies aren't necessarily looking this in the context of a business model change. And so many of these companies don't understand how they can bring sustainability right into the core of their business processes so that they can drive these initiatives not as side projects, but rather actually impactfully right within the center of their business activity, and therefore drive sustainability at scale across their businesses. So what we are seeing is that this data and business process challenge actually exists not just within their business, but it exists across their supply chains. If you consider the fact that 85% of a company's scope 3 emissions, for instance, are sitting outside of their own business. And they also transcend across business networks. So it's not just within the industry context, but they're actually interspersed across multiple industry sectors. And now the good news here is that we feel that technology can help solve these challenges at both scope and scale. And what we have seen is that digitally mature companies were actually the companies who were able to, for instance, navigate through our COVID crisis that we've seen over the last couple of years. And the same actually applies to the challenges and opportunities related to sustainability. So we believe, and we've actually proven this out in many cases, where digitally mature companies are able to do more in terms of addressing both the data as well as process challenges that I laid out earlier. I'll give you a couple of examples of how technology is actually helping solve these challenges. So here's an example of Doler, a beverage company. They have more than 5,000 different raw materials and 20,000 different product applications, such as flavors and coloring. And what SAP has been able to do is to be able to provide a company like Doler insights on emissions related to their products within their plants or profit centers, and across all of the production and the value chains that they operate in. And so what we can do is once you understand the details of where the emissions are, now we can take specific proactive activations in terms of business processes. So you can procure raw materials with a smaller carbon footprint. You can replace energy with energy inefficient machines with better ones, with more modern ones, and you can start purchasing green energy instead of conventional electricity mixes. So again, here's an example of having the right kind of data at a granular level at an amount of detail that is necessary for you to get deep insights can then help you activate specific opportunities within the procurement side or within the operations side. Another example where technology has been used is in applications related to vertical farming. So here's an example with a company called actually and Ever, which was then procured or actually purchased by Calera, where cloud and IoT technologies monitor seeding and germination, CO2 levels, and humidity and airflow in very small sort of vertical farms that are set up in these areas which are challenged from a climate perspective. Maybe there are areas where there isn't enough sunlight, or there are areas where there's water shortage. So this particular company has come up with a mechanism of creating these vertical farms, which deliver the freshest produce, for instance, but they use 90% less water and they use 60% less fertilizer and no pesticides. So they've proven out this technology using SAP, and now they've run a successful project in Kuwait City, and now they're building their next plant in Singapore with the intent of scaling this across multiple areas which are climate challenged. And not only do they do that, but they can take the same technology and actually bring this type of technology and create these types of vertical farms within the grocery stores. So bringing the food right within the grocery stores and growing these types of produce right inside of a grocery store to provide more access to people in these types of areas. So that's another great example of where technology is helping on vertical farming. Another great example is work we've done in Ghana, where we've teamed up with companies like Dow and Coca-Cola and a nonprofit organization, Repatron, which is pulling together nonprofits as well as businesses into solving the waste problem. And what we're doing here is with a solution, an SAP application that's powered by SAP Rural Sourcing Management, we're able to identify where the plastic, where the plastics waste is, and basically direct the waste pickers, who are a central part of this particular, circular economy, I would say. And we are able to actually help deliver employment to waste pickers and help them get the best wages and rates for the waste that they're picking on the plastic side. So what we've done is we've actually helped turn what could be a disastrous problem into an economic opportunity for many of the workers involved in this particular industry by bringing together both private and public partnerships. A final example I'd love to share is how technology is helping create ethical, socially responsible supply chains. One of the astounding things here is that over two-thirds of supply chain leaders admit that they have zero visibility beyond their direct suppliers. We've teamed up with a company called FRDM, which tracks and monitors human rights across supply chains in a really deep way. And what they're doing is they're continuously vetting their products and suppliers for supply chain compliance risks. And so what we're doing is we provide that data set from FRDM to millions of customers using our Ariba procurement modules. And in doing so, these companies that are using these Ariba procurement modules know that they can source from ethically and socially responsible suppliers, and that they're never at risk in terms of getting out of line in terms of the regulations that they need to serve. Just to give you a sense of the scale of this operation, today Ariba has more than 7 million companies connected as part of their network. It's growing at a tremendous rate. There are more than 77 million users on this network. It is, in fact, the world's largest business network. So the scale at which we can actually solve these problems by just introducing a few really unique pieces, collaborating with our business customers, bringing in third parties, nonprofit agencies into the business world is how we believe that technology can support sustainable business transformation. Now, moving forward, we have a full portfolio of solutions that are focused on ESG reporting, climate action, circular economy, as well as social responsibility. You can go to sap.com/sustainability to check out those solutions. We are continuously, obviously, building our portfolio along these particular lines. And I think one of the things that we also believe very strongly is that as enablers of sustainability, obviously we have a significant opportunity to improve the state of the world, but we also need to be super authentic in our own actions. And we've earned sustainability leadership through as SAP for a number of years. So one example here is that we've been the only technology company on the Dow Jones Sustainable Index for over 15 consecutive years. And as you can see, we've received enormous sort of positive ratings from companies like EcoVadis, CDP. We've pledged to be carbon neutral by 2023, and so on and so forth. So I think in terms of being authentic in our claims on sustainability, we believe that we need to live up to the standards of what we are actually sharing with our customers. And we've done a really incredible job in terms of making sure that within our businesses, we're doing everything to become exemplars of sustainability. One other thing that we have noticed is that there is no single company that can solve the sustainability challenges by themselves. And so what we are doing is we are building a powerful ecosystem across a number of different aspects and layers. So for instance, we're working with strategic management consulting firms who help advise companies on large-scale sustainability business transformations. We're working with systems integration partners who are actually helping companies implement some of the big changes that they need to do, both from a technology as well as best practice side. We're working with our technology partners to bring in new functionality into our products. And we're working with nonprofit organizations, including many global NGOs, the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, for instance, on sustainable development goals and advancing sort of the state of the art of industry-specific initiatives on plastics and on waste reduction and so on and so forth. So I think partners and ecosystem are a big part of how we believe that we should be in service of helping the world run better and improving people's lives, which is SAP's purpose. And that we hope that you can join us on this journey as well. Thank you so much for your attention.